Okay. All right, guys, welcome back to the Batar Project. Today we are joined by fellow podcaster Tom Evans. Brother, thank you for taking your time out to join me today.
No, not a problem at all. Thanks for having me. I'm super pumped to be here and share some of my story.
Let's start off. Who is Tom Evans? Give us a little introduction.
Yeah, it's a good question. Where do I start? I guess, well, I'm 21. I live in Perth. I work as a personal trainer amongst a few other things as well, just a few little different side hustles I've got going on. But the main thing is I'm a personal trainer and I'm a life coach as well. So I've started that journey very, very recently. I had my first client on last Tuesday, actually. So that's how recently I've got into the life coaching game. But yeah, that's pretty much what I'm doing at the moment. I guess in the past, grew up in Bustleton, which is a couple of hours south of Perth. For those that know that area, it's quite a nice little area, but small country town kind of vibe. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to move to the city, was just to grow and expand and, I guess be around more people, be around more opportunities. And that's kind of led me to where I am today.
So Bustleton, is that like a rural, like a little country town?
Pretty much, yeah. It's probably one of the bigger country towns in WA, but it's still relatively small compared to all the opportunities that are available in Perth anyway.
So what made you want to move to Perth? You told me you were playing cricket. Was cricket the main reason?
Pretty much, yeah. So I'd finished school in 2017, and I was playing cricket in Perth previously anyway, since I was about 15 years old. So I kind of figured, well, if I want to achieve my dream of playing cricket for Australia, which was my dream at the time, I'll need to move to Perth so that I can go to training multiple times a week without having to travel 2.5 hours there and back. So I just thought, if I move to Perth, I can get a part-time job out of school, earn some money for a year before I decide what I want to do at uni or what else I want to do, and just focus on cricket and just make that my main priority. And funnily enough, it didn't all go to plan, but that was pretty much the main reason I moved to Perth, was for cricket.
And what was it like, I guess, finishing school and moving to the big smoke? Scary?
It was pretty hard, to be honest. I'd already been battling some mental health issues at the time, and it kind of made it all a bit more amplified when I did move away from home, because none of my friends moved to Perth. They all stayed down south for their gap years, except for maybe one or two guys that went up to uni, and they weren't people I was all that close with anyway, and moving away from family. And I literally moved into a house with two guys I'd never met before. I think one was in his sort of 30s, one was in his 40s. And yeah, it was quite a difficult experience at the start, because I just pretty much never had a job before, was just studying really hard at school to get the best marks possible. And that was kind of my life until I moved to Perth. And now all of a sudden I'm out of school and I'm into the real world, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. I didn't know what my passions were, because I was just solely focused on getting the highest marks possible at school, and then also focusing all of my other energy into cricket, because that was what I wanted to do, was to be a professional cricketer. So I finally got to Perth and I was like, well, what do I do with myself? I don't know who I am. I don't know what my passions are. I don't know what I should be doing with my spare time. And I just got to the point where I was pretty lost. Like I said, I didn't know what to do with myself, and that was the hardest part about it. Was I had a big loss of identity, because at school I was the smart kid, I was the sporty kid, and that was kind of my identity. But when you move away from that, I moved into a place where, I was working full-time at a chemist, basically 9 to 5 every day. No one saw me as the sporty kid or the smart kid. That was no longer my identity. No one knew me as that. So I couldn't really resort back to that, in a sense. And even at the cricket club, no one really knew me that well anyway, because I'd never been to many trainings, purely because of year 11 and year 12. I was studying rather than driving up to Perth a couple of times a week. I was only ever playing on Saturdays. So yeah, no one sort of viewed me as that person, which made me think, well, who am I? And that kind of, led me to a loss of identity that, just made it really hard. And I'd been battling depression for a couple of years, and it kind of all got to the point where I had a bit of a mental breakdown and was a little bit suicidal, to be honest. I remember one day after cricket, I think it was my third or fourth duck in a row, basically. I was having the worst season ever, which was also another hard part about that, was having my dream taken away from me right in front of my eyes, essentially. And drove back from cricket one day, and I was just sitting in my car pretty much bowling my eyes out going, what am I doing with my life? What's even the point of being here? And I was kind of thinking of, should I take my life? Shouldn't I take my life? That kind of thing, which was something that I had been thinking about for the last week and also previously. And then I pretty much got a phone call from my mum saying, where are you? Are you okay? I haven't heard from you. And she was quite concerned and just sort of sensed that I wasn't feeling well. And then she told me, look, I obviously can't help you right now. I can't, come and give you a hug and tell you everything's going to be okay because I'm not in a position to do that. But the one thing she did say to me was get out of the car, sleep it off, and make sure you start the day fresh tomorrow and make tomorrow your day where you're going to make a change for the better. And that was pretty much the turning point in my life where I went, everything I'm doing to this point hasn't necessarily worked. I'm not in a position where I want to be. So I'm going to make sure tomorrow's my day where I turn everything around. And since then, life's been completely different. But that was sort of the one pivotal moment in my life that was the hardest point, but it's also what I look back on as the best moment of my life to date as well.
Mother's instinct to know when something's going wrong with their child, eh?
100%.
Do you ever think where you would be if your mum didn't call you that night?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'd like to think I'd still be here, but I don't know if I would be. A part of me, I was thinking about this the other day actually. I don't think I ever could have killed myself, only because of the one thought that would always pop up would be the thought of my mum at my funeral. So that was I could not have cared about anyone else. Couldn't have cared about what my dad thought or my siblings or grandparents, friends, family, nothing like that. It was only the thought of my mum that would ever have stopped me, I think. But even at that night, I was kind of at a point where I almost didn't even care about that to an extent. So yeah, it's scary to think and not something I really do want to think about, especially because of the position I'm in now. I'm just, high on life every day, essentially. So, but yeah, I'm so grateful for her having that instinct to just feel that something wasn't right and give me a call and make sure everything was okay and give me the best advice she could have given me in that moment, to be honest, which was get out of the car and figure it out, because she goes, you're the one that's going to have to do it. I can't figure it out for you. You're going to have to figure it out for yourself. And for me, that was just that light bulb moment where I went, okay, I need to do something different. I need to change because what I'm doing now isn't currently working.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the simplest of advice from the right person can really flick a switch in you.
Yeah, 100%, man. It's, like I said, it's something I look back on as the hardest point in my life, but also the best.
Yeah, sometimes you got to hit that kind of rock bottom level to realize, fuck, I need to make a change, and you're on the right path now by the looks of it.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about perspective is that, when you're going through a hard time, in the moment, it's really hard to obviously have that perspective and that gratitude. But if I think back to, similar times in my life or times that obviously haven't been as hard, but if I think back to them and I go, well, looking back 5-6 months later, it was actually such a blessing. But in that moment, it's always so hard. And that's what I tell people all the time is when you're going through a hard time, obviously it's the last thing you want to hear, but it's going to be okay. And you're probably going to look back on it in the near future and go, what a blessing it actually was. I can't really think of anything off the top of my head necessarily, but I know there's been plenty of times in my life where I've gone, this current moment is not serving me. I'm really down. I'm feeling like crap essentially. But in a couple of months, I've, looked back on that moment and gone, wow, I've grown so much from then. And that gave me the platform in which to grow. So that's the cool thing about perspective is, especially if you can keep that in your mind in the moment and be grateful in that moment going, okay, I understand that, I'm feeling really down. I'm feeling depressed at the moment, but I know that this moment now is going to serve me for some point further in the future.
100%. And just like what we were talking about before, like we both started podcasts similar times, and anyone else starting a podcast or business or whatever, it's not going to go from 0 to 1 million straight away. Like there's going to be tough times for months, years until you hit that, that big milestone. You just got to stay persistent and have that perspective. Like if I keep at it, shit's going to get good.
Yeah, well said, man. 100%.
Talk to me. What does SOTA mean to you? That's your whole project or podcast as well. You want to kind of explain that?
Yeah, so SOTA stands for state of the art, and that's something that is kind of my motto for life and something I like to live by is living a life that is state of the art. So I guess the backstory behind that is State of the Art is the name of one of the Hilltop Hoods albums, which at the time of, or basically I'll take you back to I think it was 2017, 2016. No, it must have been early 2017. My mum and I were listening to that album on the way to one of my cricket games, and funnily enough, that was the day that I hit my first ever century in cricket. So it was quite an awesome moment for me personally. And then Mum said when I got back in the car that night, she goes, you are state of the art. That was a state of the art performance. Just sort of a play on words from the album we were listening to, and the nickname just kind of stuck. And I thought, when I wanted to start my brand and my business and my podcast and everything, what better name than State of the Art? And for me, State of the Art has 3 pillars, and they are define your greatness, eclipse your potential, and embrace the grind. They're the 3 things I like to live by, amongst a few other things as well. But I always say to people, embrace the grind. Life is going to be a grind. It's not going to come easy, but that's the cool thing about it, is the harder you work, the luckier you get, the better your results and successes are going to be. So make sure you're always grinding, always working hard, eclipsing your potential as well. I don't like to think of myself as someone that strives to reach my potential, because to me that means there's still a limit to what you can go to, essentially. If you're trying to reach that potential, there's that ceiling. I want to eclipse my potential. I want to go above and beyond what I even think is possible for myself. And that's something I always tell people too, is when you're doing goal setting exercises, don't set realistic goals, because being realistic is the most commonly traveled road to mediocrity. And that's not my quote, that's Will Smith's quote, but that's again what I coach a lot of people with, is when you're doing goal setting, set the most unrealistic, crazy goals ever, because if you reach them, that's obviously amazing. Even if you get halfway, you're still doing an amazing job, and you're probably still breaking through those barriers and going above what you think your potential is anyway. And the last one is just define your greatness. So for me, defining your greatness is about what is greatness to you? What is success for you? What is your why? What is your purpose? And living that every day, and only doing actions that take you towards what that ultimate success is and that ultimate greatness is for you. And that's something I strive to do all the time, is other than when I'm, just having some downtime and some spare time, all work-related activities for me are things I want to be doing to take me towards my goals. And if that activity is not going to serve me and it's not going to take me forward, then I try to avoid it at all costs. I'm not going to do it. So even if it is something like, watching YouTube videos, I'm not just going to get into the spiral of just watching crap, essentially. I'm going to make sure the YouTube videos I'm watching are things that are going to serve me and things that I can learn from, that are going to take me closer to where my goals are in the future. So they're pretty much the 3 pillars of what I think it means to live a life that is state of the art. And the way I kind of define that in a nutshell is just living a life above modern standards, because I feel like, especially with a lot of people my age and in my circles, people are just living life to just tick the boxes and just, do their thing and just scrape by, finish school, go to uni, get a job, work to your 60, 65 and then retire, and that's life essentially. Whereas I'm like, if that's a modern standard, I want to live a life that is above modern standards. And that's what I try and coach a lot of people with as well, is let's not just strive to reach that. Let's go above and beyond everything. And that's what living a life that is state of the art is to me.
Fucking love that, bro. That's awesome. And it's 100%, bro. Like, fuck, life's too short to live on this level, bro. You want to be up here.
100%, man. No doubt.
You only get one fucking life. You may as well live it the way you want to, and to a fucking high standard.
Yeah, and that's, I always go back to that moment that I mentioned before with me in the car, and just like, that could have been the moment where, I either took my life, or I could have just gone, oh, well, this is what life is, I'll just stay at this level. But for me, I just knew that life was so much more than that. And I made a conscious decision to commit to living a life above modern standards. And I just went, I'm not going to accept living a life of mediocrity. I want to go above and beyond. And even if that means there's a few years where, I'm not getting the results, basically the screensaver or the desktop, I don't even know what it's called, the wallpaper on your phone, that's the one. The one I've got on there is a fearless motivation quote, and it says, I will make it, maybe not immediately, but absolutely indefinitely. And that's something that I like to live my life by again as well, is, knowing that I might not make it immediately, but I will absolutely indefinitely. And I've got the certainty that I will. And it's the same with, you and I with our podcasts. We might not be getting the thousands to millions of downloads an episode or per month or whatever that we'd like at the moment, but we both know that if we stick it out long enough, that's going to come, because we have the certainty that we will get there. It might not be immediate, but it will happen absolutely indefinitely.
100%. And especially when you're passionate about something, it's just like, yeah, whatever. I'm part of this journey now. Like, I don't care. Like, it's a bonus to get all those freaking views and, sponsors or whatever else. But if you're able to help someone's life, if you're able to get a message from someone like, hey, like, you've really helped my life, changed my life around, I was like, fuck, that's worth it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's my first life coaching client. I actually just messaged him the other day and basically said, dude, let's do some coaching, because he'd reached out to me and said, I love what you're doing. How did you do it, essentially? And I said, well, let me coach you, man. I'll show you exactly what I did to get to the point where I'm at now, plus everything I've learned along the way as well, through people like Tony Robbins, through different books and podcasts and events and things like that. And he's thriving off that at the moment. But if he never reached out to me, I would never have had the opportunity to coach him through that. And that's why I'm such a big fan on just reaching out to people, connecting with people, networking. It's, life is who you know at the end of the day. And that's something that I really believe, especially after doing some Tony Robbins events now with my core group of friends. I've met all of them through Tony Robbins events. So for me, I would never have met them if I didn't bite the bullet and go, I'm going to commit to doing a Tony Robbins event. And, my life at the moment feels like it's going, higher and higher and higher exponentially because of the people I'm around. And I'm sure you've heard the quote, but, you are the people, or you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Make sure you choose those people wisely and always try and find, bigger and better people to be around. If you want to be a millionaire, hang around millionaires. If you want to be a pro athlete, hang around pro athletes. Don't hang around amateur athletes, or don't hang around a guy that earns $50,000 a year. Hang around millionaires and you will become that person.
And it's just a quote, but it's crazy how true it is.
Yeah, definitely. And, like I say, my life is exactly like that at the moment with the people I've met through Tony Robbins. We've started doing, even since the last Tony Robbins event, which was about this time last month, since then, in the last 5 weeks, we've essentially started our own personal development event, where yesterday, we actually spoke on Zoom to a bunch of people for 5 hours about personal development and just presented on that. Charged a small price for the ticket, so we're making a little bit of income, which we can use to advertise it and market it. The previous weeks we ran like it was a 4-week event, which we called the Life Summit, which was basically us talking about different topics that we're involved in. So for me, I was talking about health, fitness, nutrition, holistic health, everything like that. One of the other guys was talking about investing and finances. One of the girls was talking about spirituality, yoga, meditation. And that's kind of the core group that I found through these Tony Robbins events that I'm now hanging around, whereas previously it was just mates from school that would go out on weekends and drink and get smashed and come back and just write off their weekends. And then during the week, it was just go to uni, go to your part-time job, and that's it. And that's who I was hanging around when I was trying to build all this. And now it's like, I knew I had to get away from that. Now the people I'm hanging around, like I said, life feels like it's going higher and higher exponentially because of that core group. We're all pushing each other, we're all motivating each other. And that's why I'm such a big advocate for networking, because you never know who you're going to meet. And you might find someone that you want to bring into those 5 people, and they're going to help you to elevate to another level in your life.
Yeah, and that's the power of social media as well when used correctly. Podcasting, like I've met so many amazing people through podcasting like yourself. I wouldn't have known who you are. It's crazy the amount of people you can connect with, and who knows what it can lead to in the future.
Yeah, and that's the exciting thing, is just you never know who you're going to meet. You might meet your future wife. You might meet a future business partner that's going to help you bring in millions of dollars a year. You just never know.
Yeah. Now, so you go from this mental breakdown. What were your next steps to your journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of sort of pivotal moments, I guess. That next morning after I had that breakdown, I said to myself, I'm almost going to punish myself to an extent for thinking the thoughts I was thinking. I said, I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. and go to the gym and just smash myself. So I got up, went to the gym 3 a.m. I remember doing a really, really heavy leg session. After that, I went, all right, I'm just going to go for a run. So I went for a big, long run. I then went back to the gym and did some more stuff, and then went to Jacob's Ladder, which, for those that don't know, is a staircase in Perth that's basically 242 steps. Did that a couple of times, and I got to the point where later that day I was just so tired and fatigued and just pretty much collapsed in a heap on my bed. But I remember thinking, that was awesome. That was so much fun, and that's kind of I was like, that's my new passion. Or at least if it's not a passion, I know what I can do to make myself feel good, and that might lead to something in the future. So I said, from now on, whenever I get the chance, I'm just going to train really, really hard. I'm going to go to the gym and smash myself, or go for a really long run or something like that. So that was kind of my almost an introduction to personal development to an extent, because I knew that working on myself made me feel better. Progress equals happiness. And because I felt like I was progressing, I was getting happier. And then Mum, she's such an awesome person. She had delved into a little bit of personal development herself, and she actually gave me a couple of books, recommended some podcasts. The first podcast I ever listened to was the Building Better Humans project by Glenn Azar, a guy in Queensland who I'm fortunate enough to have a little bit of a friendship with now, which is awesome. He's someone I look up to big time. So listening to his podcast, they're just small, bite-sized podcasts I think he does 3 a week. They're normally anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes long, and they're all about building better humans is his motto. So he always talks about a new topic on all of those episodes on how you can become a better human. So for me, that was kind of my introduction into personal development and realizing that whole world and going, oh, okay, like this is an actual thing. You can read books, you can listen to podcasts, you can do all of these things to improve yourself. And probably the third pivotal moment I would say that sort of really got the ball rolling for me was watching a video by Prince EA. And if you guys have never watched Prince EA on YouTube, you have to go and do it, because he's one of the most compelling spoken word creators that I've ever seen. And he's got this one video called, I think it's Everybody Lives, what is it? Can't quite remember. It's like everybody dies, but not everybody lives, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that one and just being, I think I played it 5 or 6 times in a row after it finished, just on repeat, just because I was so fixated and just in awe of what this guy was saying. And that's where I really thought to myself, like, yeah, it's so true. Everybody dies, but not everybody lives. And I want to be someone that actually lives. So from there, I was just on a mission to consume as much content as I possibly could. I would spend all my weekends walking around either at the beach or at parks and things like that, just listening to podcasts from pretty much dawn till dusk, just spending all my time learning, whether it was reading books, whatever it was. I was just trying to learn as much as I possibly could all along, and that's kind of led me to the point where now I feel like I can coach others because I've learned all this stuff. It's been such a passion for me, and I'm now in a position where I want to coach other people through that.
Awesome. Now, how did you come across Tony Robbins? Because by the sounds of it, you love Tony Robbins. You've done all his courses by the sounds of it.
Close, yeah.
What do you love about Tony, and how did you come across him?
So I first came across Tony when I was just watching a couple of inspirational YouTube videos. Essentially, this was kind of back in 2018 when I was sort of first getting into that personal development stuff, and I was just kind of, you go through Instagram, you follow one guy, and Instagram suggests another, and I was just kind of on that follow, just like, who are these guys? I want to learn more about them. And I watched this YouTube video with Tony. I was like, wow, this guy is just so compelling. He's saying some of the most amazing stuff ever. And then I just researched him some more, listened to his podcast, and listened to him being interviewed on a few podcasts. And I just kind of got to the point where I knew he's the man. Like, he's the guy that's been doing this for 40 years now. No one else is, half of these personal development, inspirational, motivational guys aren't even 40 years old, and Tony's been doing it for 40 years. So I was like, well, if he's lasted this long, he's got to be doing something right. And so in 2019, I saw just it was either a Facebook or an Instagram ad pop up and said, Tony Robbins, Unleash the Power Within, Sydney, September, 2 tickets for the price of 1. And I'd sent it to Mum saying, let's go. Like, we've got to go to this. Obviously, the whole COVID thing happened. Sydney got cancelled and became an online event. So I decided to obviously go along to the online event. It was pretty good. The first one, UPW, was pretty good, but I knew I wanted more, and I feel like it was more of an introduction to all of his other events, essentially. You kind of scrape the surface with a lot of stuff, and I really felt that. So they pitched an offer at the end for this thing called Mastery University, where you basically get another UPW, you get his Date with Destiny, which is his main event. You get Life Mastery, Wealth Mastery, and some coaching sessions with some of his coaches. And I was like, yeah, I've got to sign up to that. Don't even care what it costs. I'm just going to do it. And Date with Destiny for me was the most transformational thing I've ever done, just in terms of your mindset, because you pretty much spend, it's like 6 days essentially, which are 14 to 16 hour days. So you're pretty exhausted by the end of it, but you just go through this whole process where you figure out exactly why you are the way you are, and towards the back end of the week, you change everything to mold where you want to go in the future. And this is something that I know I will do time and time again in the future, because it is just such an amazing experience, and you learn so much about yourself, which it actually gives you that platform. Once you know exactly who you are and why you are the way you are, it gives you the ability to actually change everything to suit where you want to go in the future. So for me, that's why I'm such a massive advocate for Tony. Just because he is life-changing. He knows exactly how to break the mold of who you are and help you to break out of the rut of just doing the same things over and over again that aren't achieving the result you're after. And just some of the people you meet there too. Like, I've met some of my best friends. I've met my girlfriend through there. I've met some amazing sort of business partners and things like that too. So it's just an amazing experience where you learn about yourself, and you also meet people that are also going to help you to go where you want to go in life as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned, finding out who you are. What are some other takeaways that you took away from those events?
Yeah, well, how much time have we got?
We got some time.
It's just amazing. Like, I think one of the main things that he speaks about a lot is physiology and state. So he often talks about, what state are you in? What state do you live in? Do you live in a high energy state, or do you live in a low energy state? It's so easy for us to live in that low energy state where first thing in the morning, we hear the alarm and we go, damn it, I've got to wake up now. Hit the alarm, we sort of get out of bed, grab ourselves a coffee. We're scrolling through our phone. We're instantly looking at, negative things. Someone's, commented something, or, there's some news article that pops up about some, COVID-related deaths or something like that. We're starting the day in such a negative way. We then get in our car, someone cuts in front of us in traffic, and we're negative again. Then we live in that state for the rest of the day, and that's how a lot of us actually live our lives. And he goes, we don't have to live that way. You can do things on the daily to put yourself in a high energy state. And he goes through this exercise called priming every morning, which is basically a meditation, breath work, visualization, all of this stuff in one. But he also talks about all these different ways that you can improve your physiology, whether it's just standing up straighter, or normally I do these podcasts with a standing desk. I haven't got it on me at the moment, but I normally have a standing desk because standing is a higher physiological state than what sitting is. So generally when I'm doing a podcast, like I said, I'll stand because that's a higher energy state, which is what I want to bring to the podcast. I'll listen to music every morning. I'll do some rebounding on the rebounder I've got. All these different things to put me in that higher energy state. So that's where I live, essentially. I live in that high energy state because it's all positive emotion. That's not to say there's times where I get down. Last week, for example, I was on a down compared to what I had been, but I now know the triggers on how I can get myself back to that high energy state. So that's one of the main things, because if you live in that high energy state, your emotions are going to be better. You're going to be wanting to leave your comfort zone more. You're going to go out there and take more action and do more things as well. I've got one of my posters in front of me from Tony with some of the stuff that we did at Date with Destiny. He talks about your primary question. So what's the main question you ask yourself every day? A lot of us do it. We don't realize what it is. It's a subconscious question. It might be, how do I, it might be a question around scarcity. It's like, how do I avoid this, or how do I avoid that? We don't want to live a life in fear. We don't want to live a life of trying to escape things. So he talks about that primary question, rewording that. And it's rather than how can I avoid, it's like, how can I go out there and gain? How can I go out there and serve others and do things like that? You also go through your towards values and your away values. So we all have, different things that we value, some higher than others. And we have ones that we go towards and ones that we go away from. So for me, my main towards values are health and energy, love, joy, passion, gratitude, leadership. There's a few others on there as well. So they're the things I gravitate towards most, with health and energy being my number one thing above everything. That's my number one value. But we also have away values that we don't actually realize. And for me, that's, feeling of embarrassment, illusion of failure, feeling of rejection and alienation, consistent frustration, consistent depression. These are values that come up in our day-to-day life, which we don't realize that we gravitate towards until we do these sort of processes. But it's about realizing that they're the things you do gravitate towards when you're in those lower energy and negative energy states, and realizing that once you're consciously aware of them, you can avoid them. But most of us don't realize that we even have them. So how can we ever avoid them? So that was something that was quite pivotal for me as well, amongst a few other things. There's some amazing goal setting exercises. He talks about the 6 human needs as well. So all of us have 6 human needs that we all value higher than others as well. But if we don't meet them, that's when we're not feeling at our best. Things like certainty and significance are the two more common needs for a lot of people. People always are like, I need to be certain about this. I need my routine. I need this. I need that. And uncertainty sort of freaks them out. And significance is another one. People are always striving to feel significant in a good way and a bad way sometimes. There are those people that will cut you down, or, bullies are a good example. People that bully others, it makes them feel significant. So that's a value that a lot of people strive towards. Whereas, he talks about contribution and growth should be our main two things that we go towards of our 6 human needs, but most of us aren't even at the point where we can do that because certainty and significance take over. And love and connection sometimes does, as well as uncertainty, depending on what you value. Like my girlfriend, for example, she values uncertainty and variety a lot. So she likes to be spontaneous and just go and do things, whereas I'm more someone that's a bit more by the book, a bit more scripted. Certainty is something that I value a little bit more, but it's not my number one. It used to be before I did all these processes and figured out that certainty and significance doesn't serve me. Contribution and growth does, and that's where my top 2 human needs are now. And like I said, that was an amazing process of just figuring out, again, why you are the way you are. So there's some of the main things that we went through at his events, but like I said, I could talk to you all day. I've got some of my books and notes down there, and I could just flick through and just be like, oh, we did this exercise and that exercise, and they're all just incredible. Like, I can guarantee anyone that goes to Date with Destiny with an open mind, I have to say with an open mind, because if you go in with a closed mind, then you won't get everything out of it. But if you go in with an open mind, it will change your life. I can absolutely guarantee you that.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong. From what you've told me, I guess the common denominator would be learning to be self-aware. 1, catching yourself when you're having those negative thoughts, and 2, being self-aware and, knowing if your needs are being met or not.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, even looking at this poster here, everything I've gotten on there, you do need that conscious awareness of everything you're striving towards. If you're kind of going through life on autopilot, you're never really going to know when to descend or when to ascend or something like that. You're just going to keep floating through life at that level there. And we all know that from, the ECGs, if we use that as an analogy, right? You're dead when you're going through life like that. But if you're going through the ups and the downs, that's when you're truly living. And that's what I like to strive for in my life. Like I said, last week for me was probably a down week. But before that, I'd had a lot of, since sort of late April, early May, I was on a super, super high. Last week was a low. I'm going away to New Zealand in a couple of weeks. I know that's going to be another high. I'll probably hit another low when I come back from that. But I realize that that's what truly living is. There's going to be times when I'm higher, times when I'm lower. But because I do all of this work, my low point is still above baseline for a lot of people because I'm putting in all this personal development work. I'm not letting myself drop to complete bottom, essentially, which a lot of people, when they're at baseline, they'll only ever drop to complete bottom, but they'll never go above and beyond what their original baseline is. So for me, that's where I feel like being self-aware is so important, because I realize when I'm in those negative energy states and I know how to snap myself out of it. I know the things I need to do to get back to where I want to be. And that only comes from being self-aware and doing these exercises so that you can learn how to become self-aware as well.
Is there a tip you could give the listeners into, I guess, being more self-aware? Because it can be very hard at times, especially if you're in a very negative mindset.
Yeah, and it's probably a hard one to answer, other than say go to Tony Robbins' events. But yeah, I think it's all of just document your life, document your emotions, whether it is writing it down in a journal or, trying to think back to other times in your life. Using past events is such a good reference point. So, to become self-aware, a good way to do that is to look at the past to an extent. I wouldn't recommend living in the past because it doesn't allow you to progress towards the future. But if you look at your past and go, okay, what was the best moment of my life? What was the moment where I was just, I went out there and I just absolutely killed it? Was it on the football field? Was it in business? Was it with my relationship with my partner? Where was the times in life where I was just nailing it? Everything was going well. I was in that flow state. What was I doing? Write down what you were doing. Write down what you were thinking. What was your physiology like? Were you walking around, with a bit of a strut, shoulders rolling back? Were you talking to yourself in a positive way, saying, I'm the man, I'm doing this? What were you focusing on as well? Were you focusing on the end result? Were you focusing on getting the job done? Think about those moments in your life and then do the opposite. Think about the lowest moments of your life and go, okay, what was I doing there? How was my physiology there? I was probably, slumped over, not really, in a high energy position. I was probably, my face was probably down, I was looking down. I probably wasn't talking to myself in the best way. I was probably saying, I'm really stupid. I'm not smart enough. All these limiting beliefs will come up. And what were you focusing on? Often you're focusing on something worse than what has actually happened. You're focusing on a future outcome that is unlikely to happen but could happen. You're focusing on the worst possible scenario or situation. And once you sort of look at those things and go, okay, what was I doing when I was here? What was I doing when I was here? And even middle events, you can start to figure out the common themes or those trigger points that get you to there or get you to there. I think that's a good way of becoming self-aware, is you can look at yourself and go, what are the things I commonly do when I'm in that really good space? And what are the things I commonly do when I'm in that really bad space? And once you know those triggers for yourself, you can repeat that to stay in that level as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, it's just about trying to replicate those healthy patterns every day so you can stay at that higher level.
Yeah, definitely, bro, definitely.
Now, I love personal development. I'm all about it. Where do you think people should start with it? Podcasts, books, Tony Robbins?
Yeah, if you can afford to go to a Tony event, do it. And even if you can't, save for it because it will change your life. Date with Destiny is the one I definitely recommend going to. Other than that, I guess it kind of comes down to the person and what they feel like their best way of consuming information is. I know for me, I love physically reading a book, but I also enjoy listening to audiobooks and listening to podcasts. Some people might just be visual learners, so they might want to watch YouTube videos. But I think when it comes to personal development, find who your person is. Don't just follow the trend of, obviously I'm talking about Tony, but if you don't resonate with Tony, don't force yourself to consume his information. If you resonate better with Gary Vee or Tom Bilyeu or Lewis Howes or one of those guys, I know for me, Tom Bilyeu and Lewis Howes are two people that I resonate with highly. I don't resonate as well with Grant Cardone or Ed Milet and those sort of people. So I don't consume as much of their content as I do the others. So I think it's about finding your people and the people that you quite resonate with, and then just smashing their content, listening to all the podcasts, read the books, just as learn as much as you possibly can. That's one of the best utilities or skills you can ever have, is the ability to learn. So once you learn, you gain new skills, you gain new wisdom, you gain more knowledge that allows you to go out there and actually do things. And that's the cool thing about personal development, is all of these books, they give you frameworks, they give you new thoughts or new psychological patterns that you can implement into your brain to actually get you to focus on different things. They teach you to change your physiology, whether it be through visualization and breath work or actually physically going and doing a workout. They teach you how to speak to yourself as well. So self-talk, how to speak to others, all of these cool things that actually, once you have those skills, life just will increase exponentially for you. It's amazing. So I think for people, a good place to start is just find what you resonate with most. For me, I've got a long list of books I could recommend to people. One of those would be Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, because I feel like a lot of people come into the personal development space just because it's the cool thing to do now. It's the popular thing to be into personal development. So you get a lot of people that come into it just so that they can say they're into it, but they're ultimately closed-minded people. So that's why Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck is such an amazing book, because she actually talks about open-mindedness versus closed-mindedness and how to become open-minded. And once you're more open-minded, more opportunities will come to you. I literally tell that to people all the time. The more open-minded you are, the more opportunities you'll have, because you'll go to networking events without fear of feeling rejected or feeling alienated or something like that. You'll have the mindset, rather than being in that scarcity mode or that fear mode of going, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold a conversation with someone I've never met. You'll go into it going, who could I meet here? I could meet my future wife. I could meet my business partner or something like that. That's the cool thing about that book, is it just teaches you to be open to opportunities and learn how to find the opportunity in all those situations. So that's a book I would definitely recommend people start with. But like I said, just find what your thing is, find what you vibe with the most, and just smash that content essentially.
100%. And off the back of that, when you do have an open mindset, my book recommendation is by James Clear, The Atomic Habits. Have you read that?
Amazing book. It's something I've actually been doing the last few weeks is a bit of the habit stacking, but also when I've been setting some weekly goals for myself, making them rewarding or making a consequence for them as well. So if I don't reach that goal, there's a consequence, or if I do reach the goal, there's a reward. So yeah, I definitely recommend that book for a lot of people too.
What are you currently reading at the moment?
I'm currently reading a couple of network marketing books because that's kind of a space that I'm trying to evolve at the moment, just because it is a really good way of getting some extra income. I know a couple of people I'm quite close with in investing or even finances and stuff like that. They all recommend get on network marketing because it is such an easy way of making, whether it is your side hustle or whether it is your sole source of income as your main job, it's a really good thing to do. So I've been trying to learn as much of that as I can. And then in terms of the audio books, I've been listening to Relentless by Tim Grover, which
I'm reading that at the moment.
I like to think of myself that in the past I've probably been a cooler or a closer, and now I really want to try and transition into that cleaner state, and I'm trying to embody that Michael Jordan, that Kobe Bryant, that Dwayne Wade mentality of the cleaner without stepping on too many toes along the way, of course. But I'm really vibing with that book, especially thinking back to sports. Like I definitely wasn't a clean-up when it came to cricket. In footy, I probably was, and that's probably why I was a better footballer than a cricketer. But that's a book I would definitely recommend for a lot of people too. Relentless by Tim Grover is a good one.
Yeah, and he just recently brought out his new book as well, which is on my list to read.
Yeah, that's definitely another one to add to the list for sure.
Now, off the topic of personal development, I went through your Instagram, and was it a few months ago you did Hell Weekend or something like that? What was all that about?
Yeah, so I'm a massive David Goggins fan as well. So people that know me well will know that, I first found him kind of almost before he became famous, and I was, reposting all of his content years ago saying, guys, you got to get on this guy, he's awesome. And I read his book and I was, watched all his YouTube videos and everything like that. And I went, man, I would love to do the Navy SEAL Hell Week, but obviously I can't because I'm Australian and I don't actually want to go to war or anything like that. I would just love to do the Hell Week to see if I could actually do it. So a few weeks ago, I saw a video pop up on Facebook. One of my friends shared a short snippet of a David Goggins video that I really like. So I went, I should send this to my friends so that they can watch it. And when I went to see them on the weekend, we all watched that video together, and my friend Josh and I were like, man, we'd love to do that, the Hell Week, to see if we could actually do it. And he's in the Air Force as well, so he's been around that kind of environment a little bit in Australia. And he goes, well, why don't we do it? Why don't we just run our own Hell Week? And I was like, oh, I don't know. A week's a pretty long time, man. And he goes, all right, well, let's do a weekend. We'll call it Hell Weekend. So basically we came up with this idea of doing the David Goggins 4x4x48 challenge within that Hell Weekend as well, which is basically 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours, because we figured we'll be on the beach for 48 hours. We're going to run 4 miles every 4 hours. And in between that, we're going to just, lie in the water, carry logs, roll around in the sand, do all sorts of, carry boats out into the water, all this crazy stuff, just to callous our mind mentally. And that's something I'm a massive advocate of, is doing hard things to strengthen your mind, whether it be physically or whether it be something completely different. For me, doing it physically, I find, is a really good way of strengthening your mind, because you want to quit, especially when you're doing something prolonged like the 48 hours. I wanted to quit after the first few hours because I was already freezing cold. I was sore, and I was like, looking at my watch going, we've still got 40 hours to go. We're only 4 hours in and I'm this sore. So that was an amazing experience, and I came away from that, a lot stronger than what I went into it. And just because it was so grueling, having to try and stay awake for 48 hours was hard enough in itself, let alone having to run 4 miles every 4 hours. I think we did over 100 kilometers over the 48 hours as well, all on the beach. We were middle of the night, we'd have to go and sit in the water for 10 plus minutes at a time. It was freezing cold and the waves were just hitting us and we couldn't really see the next wave coming, and all sorts of crazy stuff. But for me, it was like I said, an amazing experience to come away from that a lot stronger than what I went into it, essentially.
Who put you guys through that? Did you hire like instructors or something, or? Yeah,
well, Josh pretty much came up with the itinerary himself. So, and then we had his girlfriend and my girlfriend pretty much run the show. So that was, kind of hard but good at the same time, because they they did not, especially at the start, they weren't nice to us essentially. Like we were, trying to say, oh, this is going to be fun. You guys can kind of take it easy on us. And they're like, no, we're not giving you any hugs. We're not even, saying anything nice to you. We're just going to, beat the shit out of you essentially. And so that was hard. And, it was just the four of us on the beach for 48 hours essentially. They were just the ones saying, all right, it's about time you got back in the water. But before you do that, give us 10 burpees and 10 squat jumps or something like that. So they were the ones running it and just making up stuff on the spot while also following the itinerary of when we had to do things. But that would just be, we'd be halfway through a 4-mile run and they'd be like, all right, get in the water for 5 minutes and then come back out, roll in the sand and then continue your run. So it was kind of cool that they would improvise on the spot because we didn't know what the next hurdle would be. Essentially, we would get to the point where we'd think, okay, it's time for a run again. At least we know what we're doing now. We can just smash out a run for an hour and then be back into whatever the girls have planned for us. But then they'd come into it, be like, nah, in the water, carry the log while you're running and all sorts of crazy stuff. So, yeah, it was just the four of us, but it's something that we're looking at turning into an event that we run sometime soon. We obviously just need to get the insurances and stuff out of the way in case someone does get severely injured or worse. But once we get that out of the way, it's going to be an event that we will run for people. So anyone that's listening to this in Perth and wants to be involved, we're going to be running that soon. And we can, if you want to get your ass kicked by me and a couple of other people, feel free to come down.
That'd be awesome. Fuck, it takes a whole lot of mental toughness. Like you could have walked away at any stage. Like it was just your girlfriend fucking running you through. Like, yeah, you could have said, fuck it, I'm out of here. But you stayed there.
Yeah, and that was the thing. We live streamed the whole thing on Facebook and Instagram too. So they were running around following us the whole time with their phones live streaming it. So that was a way of staying accountable to ourselves, knowing that we couldn't quit because there were people watching. When it was nighttime in Australia, there were Americans watching it or people from other countries, keeping us accountable, saying you can't quit. They were also typing in the chat boxes saying, I'll make them do another swim or make them drop down for 10 burpees or something. So the girls would read that and be like, oh, so-and-so said, 10 burpees, drop down. Josh and I would just be like, oh, damn it, not again kind of thing. But that was the cool thing about it is we had people holding us accountable because you're right, we could have just pretended that we did the 48 hours and walked away after 24 going, we've got enough content to sort of make it look like we did it. We've got daytime footage, we've got nighttime footage. We'll just pretend that we did or something like that. But we knew that we wouldn't be getting enough out of it. And we knew from the start that quitting was not an option. Like cheating was something that would not sit well with me, especially, because it's something I like to preach to others is doing all this stuff. So for me to cheat essentially would mean that I'm not congruent with myself. I'm not practicing what I preach. So we knew from the start we were going to do it regardless of how hard it was, unless one of us got a serious injury, obviously. But yeah, it did make it hard to an extent that we didn't have a big group of people around us. I feel like that would have made it a lot easier if there was a group of 10 to 20 guys doing it at once rather than just the two of us, because we did have to keep ourselves accountable. We might get to a point at 2 a.m. when we had to go for another run or something and the girls weren't following us because we'd let them go and have a little bit of a sleep. So it would have been easy for us to just sit on the beach and sleep ourselves or chill or something like that. But we had to go, I know there's no one watching right now, bro, but we've just got to keep going through this, one foot in front of the other, and we're going to come out of this a better person in the end.
Was there any stage where you're yelling who's going to carry the boats?
The whole time, man, the whole time. Like, we were saying that at the start, and we kind of both came out with our little sayings that we had to ourselves. Mine was "fuck yeah." That's what I said to myself the whole time, which kind of got me going. Whenever they'd be like, 10 more burpees, I'd be like, "Fuck yeah!" And that's getting back to what I spoke about before with state and physiology and the way you talk to yourself. I was saying that in like an excited, high energy thing. If I had have been moping around going, oh, not again, 10 burpees, are you serious? Like, I was making myself excited to do them, which actually made it easier. Every time they were like, all right, it's 2 a.m. back in the water for 10 minutes, I'd be like, fuck yeah, let's do this. It's going to be awesome. And I talked my way into thinking that it was going to be fun because otherwise I knew it was going to be hard. I knew it'd hurt. And even, going into it with the positive energy, I still knew that in the back of my mind, but it made it a hell of a lot easier for me to go into it and go, fuck yeah, this is going to be awesome, and talk my way out of all that negativity. So that was something that I came away with that was probably a skill I didn't have before doing Hell Weekend. Now I know that I can do that. Whenever I'm going into a tough situation, I can talk my way into making it a good situation, which is an amazing skill to have.
Well, fuck yeah, man. I'd love to fucking come over to Perth and do that, eh? That'd be amazing.
We'll take you through it at some point for sure.
As we start to wrap this up, what's one piece of advice or life lesson you could give to the listeners, and also where could they find you on social media?
Cool. So one piece of advice, well, other than go to a Tony Robbins event, it's a good question. I would say probably the main thing that's coming to mind at the moment is be open-minded and take massive action. They're my two themes for 2021 that I've set myself the goal of doing, amongst a few other things. But like I said before, the more open-minded you are, the more opportunities come up. And, a good example of this is, like I've mentioned before, I would not have met my girlfriend if it wasn't for me going through Tony Robbins, but I kind of had sort of met her briefly through Tony Robbins, and then she sent me a message saying, hey, I have a podcast. Do you want to be a guest on my podcast? And also there was a Tony Robbins meetup the following day in Perth as well. And she said, let's meet up there and I can get to know you better. And I was like, why not? I could have easily said no, I've got things on, or, because I didn't even know this person. I was like, I could have just said no, but I was like open-minded. I was like, okay, you never know who you're going to meet. And that's the cool thing. And, this person's become my girlfriend. There's other people that I've got to the point where I've been like, it's an opportunity that I think I'll probably say no to, but I don't want to say no until I've heard the full story or have listened to this person speak. Even another good example of that is my business mentor for personal training. I know he originally sent me a message on Instagram saying, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. Let's have a meeting and catch up. And I was like, whatever. I'll go and listen to what he has to say. I'm probably going to say no, but I'll at least go and listen to what he has to say and then decide. And I was just completely in awe of what this guy was saying again. And that's where I was like, I need to do what this guy's doing. I need to get mentored by this guy because it's going to help. So if I was closed-minded, I would have said no straight up, and I would never have had the opportunities that have come as a result of me being open-minded and going to listen to what that person had to say. So that's probably the main thing. And the other one is just take massive action. That's something I see a lot, is people just talking about what they want to do. This is my dream, this is my goal. But unless you have a framework and you actually do the actionable steps in that framework to achieve that goal, you're never going to achieve it. And it does take massive action. You and I both know making a podcast is not an easy thing, and it's also a daunting thing. It's scary at the start, right? Because we don't feel confident. We don't feel confident in the way we speak. We feel like, are we wasting the guest that comes on? We almost feel like we're wasting their time, if we're not asking the right questions. Are they happy with the questions we're asking? All these limiting beliefs and these doubts start to come into our mind. But if we never take massive action, we'll never get to the point where we might have a podcast that's number one in the world or something like that. And that's the thing that stops a lot of people from achieving their dreams, is they look at the steps involved and they just go, it's too much, I can't achieve it. So, I would definitely say that the main things are be open-minded so that you can have those opportunities. And once you have those opportunities, take massive action in order to achieve them, because that's what it's going to take to actually achieve that goal.
100%. Great piece of advice. And also, where can the people find you on social media and your podcast?
Cool. So people can reach out to me on Instagram, so at Coach Tom Evans. And if you want to follow my podcast related stuff, it's at The Soda Process. I'm on Facebook as well, LinkedIn, YouTube, all of that kind of stuff too. So if you just search Tom Evans, it's a pretty popular name, so it might not come up, but I've got all my links through the link tree on my Instagram anyway. So if you just follow at Coach Tom Evans, everything you need to find will be on there.
Awesome. And I'll put all the links in the description as well. Last few questions. First one, what is your definition of success?
Definition of success, good question. I think the definition of success is just living a life on your terms, as cliche as that is. For me, that's what my ultimate success is. I want to get to the point in life where every single day I'm living what's on my vision board in front of me. For me, that's what ultimate success is. It's not about the money. It's not about the fame. It's not about the lifestyle, or I guess it kind of is about the lifestyle to an extent. But for me, I just want to be living what my ultimate purpose and my ultimate passion is. And I'm working towards that at the moment. That's my number one goal above everything else, is to get there. But for me, that's what success is. And I think for a lot of other people, success might be something different. But I feel like if we're all living our dream and living our true purpose, then that's when we are truly successful.
100%. And that's why I asked that question, because everyone has a different definition of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Last question. When your time's all up and done on this earth, what would you like to be remembered for?
Oh, good question. That's one I've never been asked before, actually. Um, how do I want to be remembered, or what for? I think, yeah, a part of me doesn't really want to be remembered to an extent, because I feel like that's just the humble side of me coming out. But at the same time, I guess I just want to change people's lives. I mean, as selfish as that is, because of the feeling I get when I do it, that's what my true purpose and my calling is to make other people's lives better. So if that's the way I can be remembered, as someone that made change in the world, similar to what Tony does, similar to what a lot of these personal development people do, if I can be remembered as someone that changed people's lives for the better and created a ripple effect or a butterfly effect where that then flowed on to the next person and the next person and made the world better. Like I said, as cliche as that might be, that's how I would ultimately like to be remembered, as someone that just created change and made a difference in people's lives and made a difference for the better, not just, making a small impact, but making a lasting impact that lives on for generation after generation.
Awesome. Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining me and taking some time out of your day to come on and talk in this podcast. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure, man. It's been awesome, and yeah, I love all of the work you're doing. So yeah, thanks. I'm very very privileged to have been on and to share my story and my messages on here today.
Appreciate it. Always grateful, and grateful for everyone that's listening today. If you've enjoyed this episode, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Also, head over to Tom's social media and his podcast. Check it all out. He's doing great things himself. Once again, thank you again, Tom, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.